everyone? Everyone in attendance? Someone just nipped out the door. Right. Okay, we can make a start then. Item number 1 is attendance. Number 2 is apologies for absence. There's no apologies because all Cabinet are here. Item number 3 then is declarations of interest. Hand over to Justine.
Thank you, Lisa. Members, as you're aware, it's your personal responsibility to declare any interests. However, to assist, can I confirm that Councillor Clark, you have an interest in agenda item 8 as you're a member of the Health Board?
Yes.
Thank you. In relation to agenda item 10, I have spoken to a number of members in relation to this. There aren't any landlords, so there aren't any interests in this agenda item. In agenda item 15, can I confirm the following? Councillor Clark, you're a council-appointed governor at the Comprehensive School, so you will have an interest. Thank you. Councillor David Daniels, you're a council-appointed governor at Cwmbran High School. Is that correct? Thank you. And Councillor Amanda Owen, you're a council-appointed governor at Cwmbran High School, and that's just a personal interest. Councillor Cross and Councillor Preston, you'll have a personal and prejudicial interest in that agenda item because you have relations who are at that school, so you'll have to leave when that item is heard.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
We all agree with those, and anything to add? Okay, that's great then. Going on to agenda item 4 is confirmation of Cabinet minutes from the 14th of May. Open those ones up and take you through those. Page 1, or page 5 on the document, page 6, page 7, and then the Welsh language version on page 8, page 9, page 10. Everyone happy with those as a true and accurate record? Okay, we go to agenda item 5 then, which is updates on actions. And there are no outstanding actions. Anything to add on this agenda item? No, that's great. Right, agenda item 6 then. It's financial results 2018 to 19. Hand over to Kelly first.
Thank you, Anthony. This report sets out this Council's financial results for 2018-19 in terms of our revenue budget, capital programme and the associated reserves position. In terms of a backdrop, it continues to be a difficult time for councils across Wales. We all know the challenges we as council face due to ongoing austerity. The overspend in children's services is not unexpected given the vital work it carries out and the kind of pressure the area faces. This is not unique to Torfaen. All councils are facing similar pressures in this area. There are some positives to note. There's the additional one-off revenue windfall of £2.6 million mentioned in 5.10. This is obviously good news and to be welcomed. It has enabled us to strengthen our overall financial standing. I think it's also important to note the continued investment in our schools via the 21st Century Schools programme. I believe we're the first council to close our account. This is due to the systems and processes we've got in place and the hard work of officers. So I'd just like to note my thanks to all those involved. And I'll hand over to Nigel now to give the report, if that's okay.
Thank you. I've got 2 red lights on now. Yes, as the Executive Member says, this report details our financial outturn for 18-19 and is presented in a format in the way we manage our services. When you see the statement of accounts when you go to Council, they're obviously then in sort of statement of account language. As the Executive Member said, we continue to close early. We will be the first in Wales to approve our accounts, and they'll be audited accounts when they go on the 25th of June. And I think that's a real credit to the whole of the council, not just financial services who pull it all together. The report details the outturn. There's a table at 5.1 which shows the revenue outturn, and there's also a table there that shows achievement against agreed savings. And certainly the WAO is starting to look more and more at council's ability to achieve the savings that they agree as part of their budget. And you will see that we've achieved 80% of the agreed mitigations, which is good, but it means 20% have not been achieved, and the vast majority of those were in what we call corporate mitigations right across the whole of the council. In terms of the detail by service, education and underspend, the reasons are there within the report, and we've used that underspend two ways. One, to strengthen the resource we've got available to support the post-16 change costs, and £100,000 into their reserve, but earmarked for refreshing ICT in schools. So I think that's a really good use of the underspend. Social care has been reported regularly throughout the year as a pressure, particularly in children's services, and the report brings out the scale of the pressure there, 1.7 million over the budget, and the breakdown is given. All other parts of the social care and housing area produced underspends, which have helped with the overall position of 750,000. It is significant, but it's better than we were anticipating through the year. In terms of neighbourhoods, two of the areas have been well documented through the year, Torvine training and catering and cleaning, and both were better at the year end than had been indicated during the year. Winter maintenance emerged towards the end of the year. There is commentary in every service of the mitigations not achieved, pertinent to bring out within neighbourhoods. That's primarily slippage and a timing issue, and they're all expected to be achieved in a base budget sense. So the issue isn't going forward into 2019-20. PSSU, ICT resources and chief executives are all underspent by modest amounts, and with the exception of ICT, they've just flowed to the bottom line. In respect of ICT, we put it in our ICT reserve because we've got lots of demands on that. In terms of capital finance, it's been referred to by the executive member that shows a significant favourable position due to a change in an accounting standard. I won't bore you or myself with the details of what IFRS 9 is all about, but it is quite technical, and it's involved a huge amount of work within financial services to bring that to pass. The local Grant Thornton team have reviewed it, and now it's up with the Grant Thornton team national, but they seem generally comfortable, and we're going to use that windfall to strengthen our financial standing and resilience. So we're going to sustain the general fund, we're going to boost the redundancy reserves, and you will see we've introduced a strategic change reserve. And the finance other line then showed an underspend of 198,000, and the details are in the other report. So in relation to just summarising 18-19, I think it's been a very difficult year in revenue terms. We've managed it, and because of the windfall, it has not impacted upon our overall financial standing to the material extent we would have expected, although social care are now operating with limited service area reserve resilience. But we can't afford a similar year in 1920, and it'll be important that all services deliver on their budget envelopes, achieve the mitigations and manage in-year pressures. Failure to maintain that will obviously impact on financial standing. Paragraph 7 then briefly talks about the capital spend, which, as you would expect, is dominated by 21st century schools. And although I've said it before, I think it's worth saying again, I think we should be proud of our achievement around Band A and the post-16 college, because we're a relatively small council, and we set off with quite an ambitious Band A / Band B programme that we needed to identify over £40 million as our match contribution. And we have delivered it, and we have taken the difficult decisions that were necessary in terms of achieving it. So I think we should be proud of that. Paragraph 7 then takes us through our reserves position. 7.1 and 2 detail the general fund. We've managed to keep it above 5 million, and I've detailed in 7.2 the usage in year, nearly £900,000. 7.3 then details our service-specific reserves, and you can see the trend is reducing, and the key point there is the modest level now of the social care reserve, although they have got some reserve. 7.4 talks about school balances, and we've made the point there they've been temporarily boosted through Welsh Government grants coming in late in the year. We're not going to turn the grants down, and we're going to roll them forward. But we try to show the true position on school balances as well as the, in other words, taking out the grants. And the 7.5 is the final section on reserves and shows our corporate reserves. So you'll see there the new strategic change reserve. healthy balances for redundancy and ICT, together with carrying forward the early intervention and presenting resource. We've made the point before, general reserves would only provide 7 days of spending power if we use them, but our recurring budget is not underpinned by significant reserve funding. Our reserves remain modest. I think we've done exceptionally well to maintain them, but once they're used, they're gone. And despite the modest nature, I'm still surprised by the frequent reference in the Chamber to possible uses of reserves as though they're an inexhaustible supply of funding. I had trouble spelling that. I had trouble saying it this morning. I think we should be using them primarily to support change that assists in transforming services or making the difficult choices we need, while still keeping enough in reserve for the unexpected. Final part of the report is a reserve policy, which is unchanged, save for the inclusion of the executive member as the approver of the use of reserves now, as opposed to the leader due to the change in portfolios. So, in summary, an early closing position and a set of financial results, a generally favourable position, but one that must not mask some difficult underlying issues. We've maintained the general fund balance, and we need to ensure financial discipline in 1920 and use our modest balances to support change. They do not and cannot avoid the need for difficult choices, given the funding environment we're in.
Okay, thank you for that report, Nigel, and thank you for the leadership that you show in maintaining that discipline within the Council. I think it's important that, you know, that you're there as someone very much respected throughout the Council to maintain that discipline. It's not easy at the moment, but it's certainly better than the alternative. Anyone want to make any comments before we move to the recommendations, Fiona?
I just wanted to give a bit more context to some of the areas that have had challenges in my particular portfolio. So catering and cleaning, there was a 48,000 overspend, primarily due to the increase in the free school meals, due to take up now and changes to universal credit, which means that learners will be entitled to free school meals throughout their education, even if parents come out of the universal credit system. Welsh Government have given a grant, but whether this meets the demand yet to be seen. The cleaning costs as well, that they remain an issue with a high level of sickness. Budget reductions were proposed but also hadn't been achieved. But they are all being reviewed this year and to assess the viability and achievability. To mitigate, the Chief Officers also set up a monthly budget monitoring meeting, and the section is going to be participating in a sickness pilot to be undertaken in the department to learn lessons and see if we can support people better while reducing costs, which I think is really important as well. And the last one is the winter maintenance overspend, 105. This did come really, 105,000. This did come really late, which is incredibly disappointing. But, and whilst we didn't have much snow, it was a prolonged, as Nigel had explained, it was a prolonged period of a cold, which meant that it needed more gritting. And we also had to align our working time directives with the staff, which it made an increase to costs. But again, I've asked for a paper on this, so officers are going to come back to me so that we can ensure this isn't something that goes on into the future, or that we plan it into our budgets for the future. Thank you.
Never wanted to miss an opportunity to pick up the education service. I was pleased to hear you say that pretty much the same when you talked about 21st Century Schools programme. Coincidentally, I went to a meeting in the Pierhead in Cardiff Bay on Friday afternoon, where there was a celebration of the 21st Century Schools programme, complete with Mark Drakeford, the Education Minister, and others, Debbie Wilcox included. And they were all chortling about what they'd spent on their 21st Century Schools programme. 3 or 4 schools or local authorities were singled out for special mention. We weren't, but those 3 or 4 local authorities that were singled out for special mention, none of them came up to the mark in terms of the amount of money that they'd spent on their 21st Century Schools programme than we did. And given that we are one of the smallest local authorities, the gap between them and us in that sense is far more enormous again. It's worth mentioning that in the last couple of years, 3 brand new primary schools have been built. There's a secondary school almost completed. There are 2 other schools in the pipeline, plus a post-16 education institution. And I wish people would refer to it as the post-16 education institution rather than sixth form college, because the former is what it is, the latter isn't necessarily what it is. So all of that is a nice little segue. Thank you for the opening that you gave. And there we are. I think it's a magnificent achievement for a small local authority and a magnificent achievement for our education service as well.
Any other contributions? Can I move us to the recommendations then? 11.1, it's recommended that Cabinet notes the outturn position in respect to the revenue and capital accounts of the Council. Secondly, approves the contributions to reserves as outlined within the report. And thirdly, reapproves the reserves policy. A show of hands in favour? That's carried. Thank you, Nigel. Right, we're now on to agenda item 7, which has been deferred. So we move to agenda item 8, which is the Health Award contract for Flying Start and Families First. I'll hand over to Mandy first and then Emma Treadgold.
Thank you, Anthony. Flying Start and Families First are early intervention programmes that work by collaborating with key stakeholders to improve the outcomes of families with children aged 0 to 4. The service is targeted by areas within Torfaen, and Families First is accessible by all vulnerable families via referral. Both Flying Start and Families First are part of the Children and Communities grant. It is an opportunity to streamline the early years health service to provide a level of consistency to family support for the most vulnerable families across Torfaen. Enhanced health visiting service is identified in the guidance of Flying Start, and a contract held with an Iron Bevan now requires review in order to ensure legal propriety as they match funds to provide additional health visitors for the Flying Start programme. The purpose of the report is to seek approval for the award of contract, so I'll now hand you over to Emma Treadgold to give us some more details.
So this is our annual award for Flying Start, but this year is slightly different because Flying Start now comes under the Children and Communities grant, as we've already said. So whilst the amount that we're proposing to award is more than it was last year, that is because it involves Families First as well. So it's the 2 grants effectively together. The actual amount that we're awarding is reduced for both grants, and we've worked with the Health Board since about November on reducing those costs. It is an opportunity, I suppose, because Flying Start is postcode lottery, as people would say, as in it is targeted by our area, and Families First is targeted at those most vulnerable via referral. So what this does, by streamlining our services, it allows people outside of Flying Start areas, for example, to have parenting support, speech and language support, which they can already access through Families First, but by us working closer together, we can align those services so the offer is effectively the same. Health visiting, as you may or may not be aware, follow the Healthy Child Wales programme anyway, so if a family is vulnerable, they would get additional support that way. So the only real variance for families outside of Flying Start areas is the childcare offer. Flying Start offers childcare at 2.5 hours a day, part-time provision. But for those most vulnerable families with 2-year-olds, they are also able to apply for assisted places, which also comes under the Children and Communities grants. So what we're doing in the background, as well as this health award, is trying our best to align those services throughout Torfaen, to make it, well, to improve the chances for the most vulnerable families.
I think just to add to that, one of the other benefits is that we've managed to reduce the management costs as well. So we've got an extra sort of 3-day-a-week post for delivery, which was going into management. So the alignment has made some savings as well.
Any questions before we move to the recommendations? The recommendation then is that Cabinet approve the award for the provision of the Flying Start and Families First Early Years Health Service with an Iron Bevan University Health Board to the sum of £1,004,156 for 2019-20. A show of hands in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Right then, we now move to item 9, which is the Highways Asset Management Plan 2019-24. If I hand over first to to Fiona and then to Rachel.
Thank you, Leader. So before you, you have the report for our revised Highways Asset Management Plan and council, as a council policy. A Highways Asset Management Plan is guidance on how we maintain our highway asset, from reactive responses of repairing potholes to how we prioritise our capital investment. Our current plan was for the period of 2013 to 2018, and its expiry coincided with the need to respond to new guidance published related to the method of maintaining the asset. The new national guidance principle change is away from the prescriptive guidance where intervention criteria is set, so a programme of activity. So currently we have a programme where we will only go in and fix a pothole if it's 4 centimetres deep, to a guidance that's based on more of a safety risk approach. So now instead of, like I say, the 4 centimetres, potentially we'll look at the volume of how much traffic is on that road, so how well it's used, and then react to it appropriately, which also then helps maintain our assets into the future more effectively, as the higher the road use, the more damage that can be applied. This guidance has been considered by the County Surveyors Society of Wales to ensure it's a consistent approach across Wales, and has resulted in guidance that allows a hybrid approach of intervention based on criteria typically on our high-risk routes, as I said, and safety-based approach on the lower-risk parts of the network. So again, this means that those roads, farm roads, away from the high volume of traffic, wouldn't necessarily have the same application applied to them. Whilst most of the HAMP is effectively business as usual, I would highlight that the change of the guidance does also introduce the potential for a change in how the safety of the asset is considered, and it could be the case that the Council's insurance claim reputation rate is impacted while the guidance is embedded. I'd also like to really thank the officers that worked on this. It's comprehensive, and a lot of hard work went into it, and you'll see from the appendices that it is incredibly detailed, and so thank you very much to all the officers involved.
Hi, thank you. I think, again, as Fiona has outlined, this is an important document which sets out how sets the framework for how his inspectors undertake their work, how defects are managed, and also how our programmes for investment are designed and delivered, so future highways capital programmes are informed by this document. I think it is important just to emphasise again that this new risk-based approach rather than just a standard depth is a change, and does bring with it more subjectivity, and with that then the team are working very closely with insurance in terms of our repudiation rate and insurance claims coming in, and that's why the document is so important to be endorsed today. I think it's also scrutiny looked very closely at this, and their recommendations and the responses, and a lot of their input was really valuable, and a lot was adopted within the final report. As a result of scrutiny, we were asked to get this we decided to get the document peer reviewed, just to ensure, because it's so new. So we went to the Institute of Civil Engineers, who recommended that Swansea Council, who are the Wales lead on highways maintenance, look at this. They gave it a clean bill of health, and actually have nicked bits for their HAMP as well, free of charge. It's like a two-way process, which again shows, that the level of robustness within our document. I sort of this is a beast of a document. It's most of the pack today, and is highly technical, but due to its strategic importance and it is how we manage one of our prime assets, it is most worthy of Cabinet consideration. So therefore recommend the report to Cabinet with the associated policies.
Any questions, members? Any other comments? I guess this is an area that's under severe scrutiny because of the lack of resource, and that, as opposed to any sort of frustrations with the system, they can often sort of merge into one another. Certainly as members we get lots of traffic about, that's probably an apt term for it, about this, but whatever the process you use, if there's not enough resource to repair all the roads that we'd like to repair and resurface, then that's always going to be a source of frustration. It's good to see that that others are looking to imitate parts of what we've done, because that's, I guess, the sincerest form of flattery, and that shows that we're doing something right there. how do we work to sort of manage those expectations and make sure that people can see that we're doing what we can with the resources that we've got available?
That was actually one of the recommendations from scrutiny, was that on sort of like endorsement of the HAMP and the change, that actually a communication plan be put together on how the network is managed and do some sort of like positive messaging. I propose we do that sort of on the back of sort of like, we just had the initial proposals have come through to me for the capital programme for this year. It's more about the capital programme is the good news story. The most publicity we get is about the reactive when things just emerge. And I think, you know, we can pull some facts together and do some quite creative PR around that. So we'll be picking that up now with the communications officer.
Any other questions before we move to the recommendations? 12.1, that Cabinet approve the HAMP for the adopted Highway 2019 to 2025 as council policy. Michelle Penn's in favour? That's carried. Thank you, Rachel. If we move now on to agenda item 10, which is the Energy Efficiency Improvement Scheme for private sector housing, and hand over once more to Fiona.
Thank you, Leader. One of the key aims of the local housing strategy is to improve the energy efficiency of homes, reducing fuel poverty and improve general health and well-being. Poor housing conditions are detrimental to health and to our environment. Environmental health staff have a key role in regulating housing standards in the poorest housing, which is most often found in the private sector or rented sector. For a number of years now, it's been a requirement for housing to be energy rated on the scale of A to G. The aim of this energy efficiency scheme is to encourage and secure improvement for the lowest energy rated housing stock. The report provides national figures with 23% of households in Wales in fuel poverty. Section 4.5 provides details on the specific status in Torfaen, with over 4,500 homes in the lowest three bandings of E, F and G, which I'm sure Cabinet members will agree is far too many. This scheme, Eco3, is a statutory subsidy available from energy suppliers to provide improvements for those most in need. There's no requirement for the local authority to provide any capital funding. The scheme coincides with new regulations that specify minimum energy rating standards for rented homes. These are outlined in section 5 of the report. The key issue to note is that from April 2020, it will be illegal for landlords to continue letting properties that are F and G rated, and environmental health are empowered to serve compliance and penalty notices with fines of £2,000 to £4,000 where offences are committed. However, enforcement will be utilised as a last resort, and the initial emphasis will be on promoting compliance by way of this scheme. So the intention is to adopt the Eco3 scheme across Torfaen and target the lowest rated energy efficiency properties, E, F and G, with free improvements wherever possible, including replacement of boilers, storage heaters and providing insulation. How the scheme will be implemented is detailed in section 9 of the report. We target the most vulnerable houses by way of mail drop to all properties with a known rating of E, F and G, advising them of the assistance available. Of course, we'll also be targeting landlords and lowest rate privately rented properties, informing them of their new legal obligations and potential funding support available. Landlords' contributions are capped at £3,500. Corporate procurement are assisting environmental health with the appointment of suppliers, and once up and running, eligible clients will be encouraged to contact the suppliers directly and arrange improvements. Environmental health will work in partnership with the suppliers and will review and approve Eco3 client applications in order to ensure that any technical queries relating to the necessary works can be answered and or carry out any relevant enforcement inspections in the privately rented sector. Cabinet should be aware that this scheme should not be confused with another energy efficiency scheme being promoted locally by the Welsh Government, Arbed and Byth. This is targeted at parts of Treveth and Pont Newydd. Pont Newydd, sorry, I said it wrong. Pont Newydd. I always get it mixed up. Apologies. Pont Newydd and Treveth only at this time, and officers will manage the promotion of the Eco3 to prevent the scheme confusion in those areas. So I really commend this report. I think it is really positive. It's a win-win in terms of the council that we've secured this funding, and I would like to thank officers for their work on this as well. Pass it over to Rachel.
Thank you. First, I'd like to introduce Cabinet to Anne Garrett, who's done all the work on this and will be our environmental health officers or part of the team overseeing this. So any questions, aim them at Anne. But I think, as Fiona has outlined, this is about alleviating fuel poverty and helping some of our most vulnerable in our community. And again, just to emphasise, this is a county-wide scheme, so it's not sort of like subject to just wards or certain areas, which has in the past, I said, like with our bed schemes, etc. So that's why it's such a good... So we've got about 4,500 properties are going to be sort of like, you know, being able to benefit from this scheme. And again, all it is, once we've procured the suppliers, and they're already working, you know, across nationally on this, we'll be able to then get the promotion out and allow some of our householders to sort of like improve. You know, this is about windows, it's heating, boilers, insulation as well, to help them improve their fuel poverty. So I think, you know, it is such a good news story. Any questions, and be happy to receive them and commend your approval to Cabinet.
A question such as a statement, just to say that this is overwhelmingly good news, particularly in the current climate that we're in. It sort of alleviates two issues that I'm particularly passionate about, climate change being one of them, and obviously poverty, fuel poverty. I think if we're going to meet the ambitious targets that Welsh Government have set of an 80% reduction in CO2 by 2030, we need to bring households along with us, we need to bring homeowners along with us, we need to bring privately rented households along with us. And to do that, we need to help them. Because it's a big expectation. It is a massive. It cannot be understated. The level of work of bringing the stock that we've got up to scratch. But it's absolutely right. The Welsh Government are funding. Absolutely right that we're facilitating this, and I think it's a very welcome recognition that owner occupiers can be in fuel poverty. Private rented, obviously can be in fuel poverty, but need that additional help. It's a very, very welcome scheme, and the fact that it covers the whole of Torfaen rather than being targeted shows that we're moving some way towards bringing Torfaen stock into a more kind of energy efficient age. So yeah, very much welcome this. Thank you.
No, I'd like to join with welcoming that. I think it ticks a number of social and environmental boxes. The fuel poverty issue is one that's a growing concern, as well as alongside food poverty. Speaking to people in sort of the voluntary sector, charities and food banks, one of the problems that people often express is the cost of heating their homes, and this is a way of bringing some of it down, and that's a good thing. I also think the gap that David pointed out to is a very pertinent one. Of course, social housing associations have done a lot of work to bring their stock up to date, but if there's still people in private rented sector, which of course people are still very dependent on, who can't get social housing, and of course owner occupiers who are struggling to get by, let alone do up their houses, are left in a bit of a situation there, and if this can help benefit those people, then that's a great thing. I'm just thinking, with all this going on, what would be the best time to sort of have a progress report on this, to see how it's going and to see what impact it's had in bringing our stock up to date?
It runs for 3 years. I think it runs till 2022. So perhaps an annual one, just to see sort of what the uptake is in respect of it.
I think that's a pertinent point, because, I mean, it's frustrating because some of our programmes, our bed in particular, it's been difficult getting people to uptake it, and I think it's probably a reflection of the kind of the heavily sort of marketed climate that we're in, where people are offered this, that, and the other, and it costs. I mean, it is free. A lot of these services are forked out by Welsh Government. So it'd be interesting to revisit this and check how we're getting on, because I can't emphasize, to meet that sort of ambitious carbon target, we need households to take this on board. We need households to become more energy efficient, and this is seeking to help them do that. This isn't sort of lumping a huge cost onto households. This is actively trying to kind of help them achieve that. So, yeah, from my perspective, it'd be welcome to revisit this and see how the uptake is. And if the uptake isn't as good, what do we need to do to make it, to improve on that? Because this is funding, and you don't get that, increasingly don't get that in this day and age, do you? So
maybe if we put onto the forward plan an update in just over a year's time to see how this is going. Obviously, one of the key issues will be targeting the right people with communications to make sure that we get the take-up rate amongst the people, because very often the people who would benefit most won't necessarily be the ones to come forward, or, as David said, they might be sort of reluctant because they might think, oh, where's the catch? How are we going to work to sort of target those communications, do you think?
I think, I think absolutely that how we communicate with people is the key, really, because if it even has the hint of looking like these sorts of junk mail that you come through the post and stuff, people are just going to bin it straight away. So it's how we talk to them and how we kind of emphasise that we're not trying to extort money out of you. We're not trying to. There isn't a catch, you know.
There are two things really. One of them is the information that we've got is gathered from EPC certificates and other sources. But there are currently around 23,000 properties in Torfaen that have EPC certificates. There's about 42,000 housing stock. So there's quite a lot of people out there that we're unaware of what conditions they are. So there's probably more than down here. I mean, we've got addresses we can write to. Other ones that we're aware of is how we target the ones that we're not aware of. You know, we're looking to put things online, doing advertisements, things like that. Media. So, you know, just getting the information out there for people.
That's another thing that an update report could report on, how that's going and how we go forward. If I can bring in Alan Jones.
Yeah, just to say, I think this was carried out in Blanavon a couple of years ago. Was it the same
That was
project?
the Arbed. This is a new scheme. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think actually all these different schemes can add to the confusion and the noise out there in a way as well, which has been sort of like feedback which is given back to Welsh Government as well. But, you know, I'd much rather have a county-wide scheme because you can have poverty, you know, even in affluent or perceived affluent areas. And that's why, you know, I really welcome this, and we need to focus as much attention on this in terms of, I think, I think it'd be good to do a member seminar so members are briefed, so then in their surgeries or wards they're able to identify this as well, and we can produce little briefing packs then to go around as well, but we pick that up for communications.
Okay, everyone happy? It's ironic to be talking about heating homes in the middle of June. But then the way the weather is today, then it's probably quite right. But right, if I can move then to the recommendations at 12.1, that Cabinet approves the recommended proposals for implementing the Local Authority Flex Eco3 Energy Efficient Improvement Scheme for private sector housing, as outlined in the report. Can I have a show of hands in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Right, so we move on next to the South East Wales Highways and Civil Engineering Framework Agreement. And once more, Fiona.
Yeah, sorry, it's me again. One more to go after this. So I recommend this report to Cabinet as it ensures that we are procuring the right advice at the right price for our highways and civil contracts in the works we undertake. As Cabinet will be aware, each year we have a capital programme for highways maintenance, and we also undertake civil projects, primarily things such as safe routes to school, local transport improvements and any works to structures. Most of this work is grant dependent, which is only annually allocated, which means that the Council cannot afford to employ the expertise. It also wouldn't be able to afford the range of expertise that we can draw upon for the design and construction of these projects, which I think is key. Since 2008, we've used these collaborative framework contracts. This allows us to secure value for the money and effective and efficient services. It's also important for Cabinet to understand that the contracts have been designed in such a way to include SMEs through the use of lotting strategy and breaking up contract values, which is obviously very important to us. The Council are not committed to anything through this agreement. It simply provides the procurement framework within which specific projects and schemes can be managed. The Council also has its own framework contract, therefore allowing us to ensure that we get the very best possible deal for any works forthcoming. I therefore recommend the Cabinet report as outlined in paragraph 12, and if you want to add anything, Rachel.
I haven't on this one. It's a very straightforward contract award.
Any questions from Cabinet? It's good to see the point that you make about the contracts being broken down to allow smaller businesses to be involved in them. And it's good to see this is a collaborative thing, working with other councils both in the region and across Wales. If I move then to recommendation at 12.1, that Cabinet approves the use of the collaborative South East Wales Highways and Civil Engineering Framework Agreement to procure construction works where it's appropriate and provides best value to the authority. Show of hands in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Right, item 12 then, the South East Wales Schools and Public Buildings Collaborative Construction Framework. And Fiona, I think it's the last one, isn't it?
Thankfully, this is my last one. Maybe we can just mix it up next time. As per the previous item, this is for approval for a regional capital framework agreement for schools and public buildings. Torvine have worked with a regional contract framework since 2011, and it is these contracts that have helped deliver the successful 21st century schools programme. It is important that the Cabinet realise that existing contracts are honoured. There will be no disruption to the existing building works being undertaken, in particular across Caerleog and the Torvine Learning Zone. This is for new schemes. Again, the Council have allotted the procurement and broken up contract values to give, again, opportunities for SMEs to play their part, and this is welcomed as we look to do more of a foundational economy level. Like highways, this work is grant dependent, and therefore it would not be cost effective for the Council to have an in-house expertise. I know that at times consultancy spend can be seen as a negative, but when I look at what we've achieved with our private sector partners on the school building programme, I can only recommend this report as a best way forward. I therefore recommend the report as outlined again in paragraph 12. Thank you.
Okay, if we're happy then to move the recommendation, any questions? Any comments? The same points really apply to this as it applied to the last. That it's good to see the foundational economy approach there with the breaking off the smaller contracts and the collaborative approach as well. So recommendations at 12.1 is that Cabinet approves the use of the South East Wales Schools and Public Buildings Collaborative Construction Framework to procure construction works where officers determine it's appropriate and provides best value to the authority. Show of hands in favour? That's carried. Right, on to item number 13, which is appointments to joint committees and partnership bodies. If I enable Nancy to reach the... I'll bring in Nancy Selkild.
This is just a straightforward and short report to seek appointments to joint committees and partnership bodies where those appointments fall within responsibility of Cabinet. So Cabinet needs to appoint members to the joint committees, which are listed in Appendix 4 of the Constitution, and they're also listed in Appendix 1 to this report. Executive or non-exec members can be appointed to the joint committees. Cabinet also then need to appoint exec members to the partnership bodies listed in Appendix 1, again, of this report. Just one other thing to mention. Cabinet previously decided not to appoint members to serve on the Equality Subcommittee and the European and Regional Affairs Subcommittee, which have been established under the Constitution. The Cabinet previously recommended that these issues would remain under consideration by full Cabinet, and that's recommended again for the year ahead. So the list is there for you to see. There's just a few changes from last year. Just one I wanted to point out for Councillor Preston is the Education Achievement Service Company Board. So that's really the one change that we've got this year. Others just go on from year to year, but it's just a requirement that we bring it before you to make the decision. So it's very straightforward. Unless there are any questions, I just would like to recommend it to you.
Any questions on this? I'd like to thank the members of staff have helped put this together, and also the councillors who give up their time to sit on outside joint committees, which can often take a bit of time up and in already busy diaries. So thank you to all the members who contribute there. If I move then to the recommendation, at point 7, that Cabinet agrees the appointments of joint committees and a number of partnership bodies as listed in Appendix 1. Secondly, that these appointments have immediate effect until Cabinet next amends the appointments or the next local government elections. And thirdly, that Cabinet agrees European and regional affairs and equalities matters continue to be dealt with at meetings of the full Cabinet rather than by subcommittees. Are we happy to approve those? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Nancy. Right, so we move then on to item 14, which I believe is the exclusion of press and public. And this is the point at which I ask Cabinet to agree the exclusion of press and public from the meeting, as the report that follows is not for publication because, in accordance with paragraph 14 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Access to Information Variation Wales Order 2007, they contain information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can I have a show of hands in favour of that? That's carried then. So we move on.